All right, I'm here with Pete Hegseth, Chief Executive Officer for Concerned Veterans, and you guys are in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And it's odd, and our audience can't see this, but I expected someone much older. And you're obviously a vet, correct?
Yeah.
How did you get involved in this?
Well, I ran another veterans organization before this, and I served in Iraq and Afghanistan and Guantanamo Bay. When I got back from Iraq, I didn't feel like the conversation here in 2006 included a veteran's voice of our generation. Because when you think of vets, you do. You think of older folks.
You think of me. I'm a vet,
yeah.
and I'm older.
And it's no.
Oh yeah.
That's what you think of. So we wanted to provide a voice to our generation coming back to say, hey, we're fighting for something. It matters. Here's what's working. Here's what isn't working. And go to policymakers with a reasoned argument to include our voice in that debate.
And Pete, what is your big project that affects veterans more than anything else?
Well, we try to identify where veterans are at. So
this is something that affects them negatively, correct?
Yeah.
I mean,
we asked them what are the biggest threats to U.S. security. We asked 800 vets and military members last month.
Okay.
Just to send a poll out. Mm-hmm. It came back. The top issue was the economy, 42%.
Really?
The second issue was debt at 30%, which was shocking to me, right?
So it all comes back to the economy, debt, money, whether you've got it, whether you've not.
Yeah, I mean, vets are not a monolith, right? Everyone thinks, okay, vets are just concerned with the military and the VA.
Right.
Of course, TRICARE matters to me. Of course, I just got back from Afghanistan.
What is TRICARE? Tell me what TRICARE is.
TRICARE is military health care, effectively. Okay. And so I receive it as a National Guardsman for my family. Active duty receives it. It's our version of military health care.
Okay.
And it works fairly well. But the premiums are artificially low, and there's issues with. There's plenty of issues like any other government-mandated healthcare program, but it works well enough because it's a defined pool of a certain subset of the population that's able to access it. So we're just out here talking about these issues and breaking down the facade that all I care about are my VA benefits. I want to make sure my country is financially sound, fiscally sound, that we're not drowning in debt. We're about to hit the 16 trillion mark next week. With a T.
Exactly.
We're passing a maxed out credit card to the next generation with no plan to pay for it.
Well, from the vet's point of view, what is the solution to this problem? I know that it's overwhelming and it's not a simple answer.
Yeah.
But how do you go about changing this?
Well, I think first of all, you gotta go out and act. You gotta be an advocate, care about it, stay involved. So you will put the uniform. You cared enough to put the uniform on. When you come home, professionally get involved, find a way to advocate. I would say you have to reform the massive drivers of our debt and deficit. So that includes, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, our entitlement programs, which are now constitute 60% of our budget.
Yeah, but don't you think that when people think of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, number one, they think of older people.
Sure.
Number two, they think, well, it doesn't really affect me now, because it does, but it doesn't. It seems like it doesn't, but it really does. It's like a stealth cloaked, terrorist.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
It is. And politicians have banked on that. That it's this vague, amorphous idea that does. Now, seniors understand it. That at or near retirement.
That's because we're getting,
My generation, I'm like, man, I don't even expect to see it, nor can I right now, based on the projections of
how old are you?
we're gonna. I'm 32.
You don't expect to see it. I have a son that's 22, and he probably doesn't expect to see it either. My other son is 16. He went to work this summer for the first time. He got his first check for $620. It was supposed to be $690, and he said, well, why is all this money taken out of it? And I said, well, that's the government. What? that's
don't worry, they'll be there
up.
when you're 65. Yeah. No, that's.
Yeah.
I think you wake up at different times in your life, and what we're trying to do is sound the alarm now. But you also, as veterans, we have to be willing to say there's plenty of fat to be cut in the Defense Department too. Mm-hmm. We see the waste. I've been deployed 3 times. I see it. So we've got to be willing to take our sacred cow in the Defense Department and say, we'll make strategic cuts, reforms to the defense budget in order to get the same kind on the other side.
This is kind of a libertarian thought, and I guess I would be a conservative libertarian or a libertarian conservative, whatever. It's hard to figure out exactly what I am, but I think I would fall in that category. I have always been under the government's just in too much of our stuff. Even though it's the military, Do you think that privatizing certain things would be better? In other words, the private sector would do a much better job than the government sector?
Well, it's interesting. We've thought a lot about that because at Concerned Vets for America, that's one of the principles we're about, shining the free light of the free market, limited government, the free enterprise system, which has made our country great, which has brought us the most powerful military in the world and the best economy in the world. So we've thought a lot about that. I think within there's a special attachment between veterans and their benefits, and the fact that if I went and served and put the uniform on, then I expect my government. I mean, I've earned these VA benefits,
right.
and so we don't want to divorce that relationship, which is very important. At the same time, if the VA is not delivering the way it should, then we need to look at reform so that we do better. And we've had the backlog when this president came into office was 400,000 claim backlog in the VA. Today it's 880,000 person backlog in receiving claims.
So what you're saying
there's a
is,
log jam somewhere.
Well, what you're saying, I think, just to break it down simply for my simple mind, is that government is inefficient. It's uncaring. It's interesting. George Washington said an interesting thing about what government was and government wasn't. And it's a very short quote, and maybe you can stick this in your arsenal. He said, government is not reason. It's not eloquent. It's force. It's like fire. It's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And that's what government is, and what it isn't. So it's very difficult when you have any kind of program, veteran or otherwise, when the government is involved, and it obviously has to be on a certain level.
Sure.
But they are terribly inefficient. They're uncaring. They're not eloquent. They don't have reason. So there's no reason involved in things that they do, and that's what's very frustrating to people like you and me.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, central planning, that's what you get. It's heartless central planning.
It is.
And there's no ability to adapt. I mean, we should have foreseen the fact that we'd have more veterans coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Well, it's interesting when the president gets on, does a speech once a year when he does a State of the Union.
Sure.
What does he do? He takes people and sticks them in the crowd and puts a face on whatever he's talking about. So I guess it would probably help of putting the face on, well, we see veterans every day, don't we? They're all over the news. They're in tanks and airplanes and behind barricades with AK-40, whatever they are. I mean, they're everywhere.
Well, we
so
sort
those
of
are
see
those are the faces of the guys that are defending us.
It's true. We sort of see them, but do we?
That's the point. It's like a news story. It's just another guy, another face until you.
Yeah, but even then, I mean, we're at the Republican convention and we're talking about debt and we're talking about these things. But are we talking about Afghanistan? Are we talking about the 80,000 troops we've got over there? Are we talking about the budget cuts that are about to hit the Defense Department through sequestration? I haven't heard a word about it. That's not where the conversation is. So we're trying to pull the conversation back to veterans when we can, and how veterans can be advocates for solving the big problems, the fiscal problems we face in this country.
There you go. How can they be advocates?
Well, they could join our organization.
Okay. Well, then, so your appeal is to veterans to join your organization, advocate for what you believe in.
Yeah.
And be part of the program.
And veterans of all ages. We've got a lot of Vietnam vets. We've got some World War II vets that are leaders for us in certain states. We want to do two things: help educate veterans on these fiscal issues about keeping our house in order and maintaining our economic strength, and then also provide a platform for them. If a guy comes back, he's served, he comes back to his community and wants to get involved, we can help plug him in. We're a nonpartisan organization. We're not here to support a political party. We're here to preserve the strength and prosperity of America, and want to help veterans raise their voice.
Couldn't say it any better, Pete. Thank you,
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on the show.